Hi there, I'm Michael Palladini. I'm from up north where we say yous guys.
And I'm Tammy Palladini, and I'm from the south where we say y'all.
When north and south collide,
you know there's going to be some good eating.
Damn right.
Well, cooking has always been my passion. I love watching Food Network, as you know. It stays on that a lot. And I always wondered what it would be like to be on Food Network, but since that's not going to be in the cards for me, this is the next best thing.
Yeah, and if you ever watch a video or of how they do those cooking shows, I mean, it's like shooting a movie. It's just, it would drive you crazy. It's like one of those things.
So complicated.
Don't meet your heroes, because
Yes.
It would be crazy trying to, it wouldn't be fun anymore. But, we're probably not going to be a pro show here, but we can still have fun doing it. So, but we both love to cook. We don't have any fancy pedigrees like a culinary degree
Cordon bleu.
Yeah, wishful thinking. Huh? We don't own a chain of restaurants anywhere or anything like that, but we feel we have more than adequate cooking cred because we both learned how to cook from our 4'0" grandmas and
Unfortunately, I'm still not much taller than that.
You're still 4 foot something, aren't you?
Right.
No, you're 5. You're 5.
We'll say 5.
I'm just like incredibly tall. If I stand up, you can't even hardly see me, so I got to bend down here to be in the frame. So, but anyway, I remember as a child, being over at Grandma's house, for the weekend or whatever day it was for a meal, and she was like first generation American born, so it's like,
good food.
You just walk in the house and you just, this little blue-haired dynamo in the kitchen, just, and the smells, and she did the pasta sauce, where you cook it for like 2 days. I mean, it took 2 days to make. Oh, it was absolutely
wonderful.
Incredible. And there was no girls in the family, basically, so I would always pay attention. Yeah, and she eventually would start teaching me how to cook, and I just made sure I paid attention because it's like I'm gonna want to learn how to make this stuff someday.
Exactly.
So.
And I remember every Sunday going to my grandmother's. Every Sunday was like Thanksgiving.
Right.
There was so much food and desserts,
dishes and desserts. Yeah.
And it was such a treat as a child, and I'll never forget that. Of course, my grandmother and my mother both bestowed, I want to say, the gift. Because I love cooking,
yeah,
and I feel like I do pretty well at it.
My mom was a pretty good cook, but man, Grandma took the cake. And even my mom, bless her heart, she rests in peace, she would agree.
And I remember standing on a chair at the countertop learning to cook. That's how early on I did. And of course I had an easy bake oven.
Absolutely.
Every
I didn't have
little
one of
girl
those,
has one of those.
Yeah.
And the one other thing was I learned literally how to reading recipes.
Yeah,
in cookbooks. I loved it.
God almighty. Those were the days. And you just never forget the smells of Grandma's kitchen.
Nope. And let's get cooking.
Yep, let's go. So, welcome to the second installment of our little homebrew cooking show. The first of which we called Tammy's Country Kitchen. And that's where, it's a few years ago now.
That's been 3 years ago.
We're trying to build a house, and it's crazy. But you got to see Tammy make her legendary double chocolate chip cookies. And if you don't believe me, you just look up my son's online, or anybody who's ever had her cookies, and you will understand. So, but in this series, you'll enjoy something very different from what you typically see on your Food Network, your cooking shows, channels, or whatever. As a husband and wife, we'll be combining our very different culinary heritage, backgrounds, the different ways of cooking things, and here in the kitchen for you, the audience. I mean, this is something we do every day at home. We've come up with many different interesting takes on just everyday budget-friendly recipes that just stuff you make every day. I know that's just so foreign to most people nowadays because I don't think hardly anybody cooks anymore.
I come home and make homemade things all the time. And
Yeah,
I know it is foreign to a lot of people, but
yeah, but it's
not
good.
difficult, and it's good, and it's really better for you because there's no preservatives in it.
Yeah, I mean, okay, you do your best to avoid any, crackheadedly scientifically modified stuff or whatever, and you go with your gut on or what you believe in. If you're a vegetarian, or me, I'm a meatysaurus, and garlicosaurus, and
I'm not trying to be June Cleaver here.
no.
Believe me, I work a full-time job, so
yeah, we both work crazy full-time jobs, but yet we still, we still get
root of it. Enjoy cooking.
We enjoy cooking, and I'm sure that's a lot to do with it. Most people, may not like to cook, but for those of you who are afraid of it,
it's not.
It's
nothing to be scared about.
It's nothing to be scared of. Yeah, I mean, we come home every day and have a home cooked meal for dinner, and it's good. It's good for you, and it's budget friendly.
Right.
And it doesn't come out of a tin plate that you pop in the micro or pop in the oven.
Exactly.
And, so today though. Normally we're going to focus on, budget-friendly everyday stuff. But today, since it's Valentine's Day,
Yes.
2015.
Yes, this isn't budget-friendly.
This isn't exactly what
And believe me, we don't buy this meat every day.
No. But we're going to be doing something extra special. So we're going to make a bacon-wrapped filet mignon with a white Stilton cheese and cranberry topping. And, it's...
Oh, and don't forget, we're having homemade mashed potatoes, y'all. Because you gotta have it. It's gonna have mushroom gravy. And gotta have the gravy.
Yep. And no Valentine's Day meal would be complete without chocolate dipped strawberries. So
I'll even show you how to do those. It's very simple.
Very, very simple. And
beats paying all those high prices in the grocery store for them.
And
Valentine's Day, they sell them for like $25 for 10. And
God, it's crazy. And then you have the benefit of being able to say, hey, I did this myself, and what was the thing from the movie Ratatouille? Anyone can cook.
Anyone can cook.
So anyway, here I'm gonna post a little quick blast of the recipe here. Don't worry, I'm gonna post it in the description below so you can cut and paste it out for future reference. So
definitely.
Let's get started, Joe.
We will.
Yep. Okay, so we've pretty much laid everything out here, as to the order of how we're going to do things. So, since the potatoes are going to take the longest to cook, we're going to have them there. Now, I've done 6 potatoes. That's going to be more than enough for the 2 of us. Now, your meat, you want to take it out and let it sit for at least 20 minutes. Now, not all day, because you don't want any bacteria or anything like that, but you don't want to take cold meat out of the fridge and start cooking it.
Mm-hmm. It'll steam it.
It'll steam it and it'll ruin it. So, it is kind of sciencey. There's a lot of science behind it. Anybody who's ever watched Alton Brown, Good Eats, love you, Alton. And so you want to leave it out here and let it come up to, at least knock the chill off of it. And then here's our white Stilton cheese. You want to do the same with that. You don't want it, totally fridge cold. And the most all-important cooking tool you'll ever have is a good cast iron skillet.
This one is probably 40 years old.
Yep, you can see, and
very well seasoned. It virtually becomes non-stick.
Yes, exactly. You don't ever want to wash one of these with soap and water.
No.
And it'll make a germaphobe probably just cringe, but believe it or not, that's it's the best way to do it.
Alton actually has a tip on that, and it's salt and paper towel
to clean it.
To clean it.
Yep, because you figure when you heat that skillet up, believe me, it's sterilized. So, and then of course, here's our sliced mushrooms. We're being lazy. We bought sliced ones today.
Yes.
And then.
And.
We're cheating on the gravy because
but we're gonna
filet mignon is a very lean meat. You're not going to get a lot of drippings out of it. So
but we're going to show you also how to up the wow factor with a simple package.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
By adding mushrooms to it.
Adding mushrooms to it, exactly.
It'll taste really better.
Of course, butter. Got to have that, Pauline. And then this, nothing fancy. It's an all-around rub. you use for any steak, or in our case, we're going to do the filet mignon. I think they call it like a 721, and it's 7 tablespoons of kosher salt, 2 tablespoons of ground pepper, like a coarse ground restaurant grind pepper. You can use regular ground pepper if you don't have that, and 1 tablespoon of garlic powder. Now, since I'm Italian, it's going to be like a 7-2-10 or something.
And that sounds like a lot, but this is a rub that I will put up in a bag for other meals. I'm not using all the salt on that.
Yeah, you're just going to rub the surface of the meat, and that's what's going to help it sear real nice.
But usually I go ahead and make up a lot to have on hand.
But at its base, it's, 7-2-2 or 7-2-1. If you like more garlic, put a little more garlic in there. Which is
what we did.
There's no hard, fast rules with that.
And it smells wonderful.
Oh, yes. And the potatoes, like I said, since they're going to take the longest, we're going to start with those first. We like the skin on. If you don't like the skin on, fine. That's no problem there. You just, peel them up. Now, we're just going to wash them up and cut them up in little bitty pieces and
they'll cook
boil
faster.
them. They'll cook much faster if you to mash if you cook them up in little bitty pieces. And your meat, I have a close up of the package. We go to Sam's Club. We don't have the benefit down here of of having a corner butcher, like we did up north.
Exactly.
So, we have to find either a grocery store or Sam's Club, where they have a butcher department to where, and they'll direct you to the best, cut of meat. And technically, what do they call it? A beef tenderloin
It's
or something?
It's a beef tenderloin. It may not say filet mignon on the package.
For example, it doesn't always say that.
But you want it about an inch thick.
Inch and a half thick.
And this is just perfect here, the marbling. And it's not going to have a lot of fat, as he said.
Right,
it's a very lean cut. As a matter of fact, anybody who's ever ate a porterhouse knows that this is part of a porterhouse steak. This comes off of one side of it.
Yep.
And then you get your strip steak on the other.
Yeah, and we'll trim this down a little bit before we, trim some of the excess fat off of it before we start cooking it. And your bacon, now if you're going to wrap a filet to give it a little extra flavor.
Right, one would probably be sufficient, but we've added some extras here because
we're going to chop it up and throw it in the mashed potatoes. That's good Southern cooking, If you can't fry it, put bacon on it. That's
oh yes, everybody that I know loves bacon.
And and there's no.
This is a simple cheap bacon.
Cheap
is better.
The cheap thin sliced bacon is better because your flavor comes from the fat and the drippings. And you'll notice that later on in the shoot here where we're going to use some of those drippings to help to
flavor
the steak, and some of it will go into potatoes to give it a little flavor, and the gravy. So anyway, on we go. Now we're gonna wash our potatoes and get cracking on them first. All right, you just cut your potatoes up into
The smaller
pieces.
the better. They won't take as long to cook.
Yeah, and you're going to mash them up anyway, so.
Usually what I do, I start, I'll just go ahead and demonstrate. I start with one whole. I cut it in half.
Cut them in half again, yep.
And then I just make small dices from there. And if you find some pieces are a little bigger, just go ahead and hit it again with a knife.
Yep.
Like I said, it doesn't matter on your knife cuts because it's going to be mashed.
It's going to be mashed up, yep. And remember too, when you get your water, always use cold tap water, because cold tap water is going to come to a boil quicker than hot water. So there's a little more science for you there.
Okay, so what we have here is the mushrooms. All mushrooms should be washed. There is a lot of argument going around. Some people say you should never get them wet. You should just simply rub the dirt off of them. I prefer actually rinsing them off. I just feel better doing that.
Yeah, you throw them in a colander, a little handheld plastic colander, run some water over them, kind of swish the colander around a little bit.
And what I'm doing now is drying them, because you definitely want them to be dry when they go into the skillet when you saute them.
Yeah, if you ever watched Julia and Juliet, or Juliet and Julia, or whatever, you know, they won't brown if they're wet, so they have to be dry. And once they're
once they're pretty dry, I'm just going to let them sit.
Yeah, let them set and dry out. And while that's doing that, I'm going to get over here and start putting the rub on the meat. Okay, of course, now is a good time to make sure that you know, you should already about have your oven preheating.
Our oven is on
potatoes.
425 convection.
Yeah, that way, if it's convection, 425, 430, somewhere around there if it's just a regular oven. Because you know convection cooks a little more efficiently, so you can use a little lower temperature. So at this point right now, you should have your potatoes in the pot working up a boil, and then
mushrooms
are drying over here on the other side. And now I'm going to work on putting the rub on these two fine-looking fillets here. If you could get me some paper towels, if you would, to wipe my hands with. Now, anytime you're working with meat, you want to make sure, of course, you wash your hands first.
And wash them after.
And after, yes. And of course, you'll notice I took my wedding ring off. Sorry, honey. But it's good. It's just good, you know, good procedure for that. And so with our rub here, you know, usually you make up a bunch of this stuff and you put it in a you know, an old spice jar or something. That's your everyday go-to rub. And all we're going to do is just drizzle a little bit on each piece. Don't worry about being pretty, and you just want to rub it all around there real good. And honey, if you want to drizzle some more on my hands here while I'm doing this,
sure.
Just get it all on there, rub it real good, and just get it all nice and going here. Like I said, you know, we're not. I guess cordon bleu would slap your wrist for something. I don't know. I don't know what the technique is, but you just kind of develop it yourself as you go. And that's the part of cooking, you know. You experiment, you learn.
You learn. That's right.
And you get this nice, and then there you go. You know, that's it. And then you just keep a couple of paper towels handy here and wipe your hands. And as long as you're working with any meat, you know, you can use this paper towel. But once you're done, you get rid of it.
Another thing is, the reason he asked me to do that, he can't contaminate this, because if he put his hands in this,
that would ruin that rub. That's why, too, just in case, as a backup plan, you know, you pour some out of your container and have it to work with for your meal.
Yep.
So now I'm going to go wash my hands. Okay, now contrary to popular belief, when you're cooking bacon, you don't want to start with a flaming hot cast iron skillet. You actually want to put your bacon in there, and just as you're getting the pan heated up, and then the bacon will start cooking. And you can hear it just now starting to sizzle as that pan comes up to temperature. And we just want to cook this bacon just a little bit. We don't want to make it crispy. We just want to draw some of the drippings out of it. Oh, here it goes. All right, so we got that bacon at a good sizzle right now. Now, sometimes, you know, folks want you to put the bacon on your fillets raw, but since, you know, it's only going to be in the oven for a few minutes after you sear the meat first.
Just want to be safe.
We just want to be extra safe. Plus,
it's done.
Yeah, plus we want to draw some of the drippings, a little bit of the drippings out of that bacon.
Yeah, this grease is going to be very, very good.
Very useful for the not only the meat later on in the process, but also we're going to put it in the gravy and the potatoes. So that's the southern bit there. I learned that when I moved to the south. And
there you go. That's right. Okay, so we've left one piece of bacon in the skillet that we're actually going to cook all the way, because that's going to go on the mashed potatoes.
We'll make it nice and crispy, and then we'll chop it up and put it in with the mashed potatoes.
But
so we're only cooking for 2 here, so 1 piece is sufficient. 10 if you're my son.
This is the way it would look.
Yeah, you just want to cook them just a little bit till the drippings start coming out.
They're still going to be pliable to go around the meat.
Right. Okay, so you want to get you a good-sized double pat of butter in there.
About a tablespoon
in your skillet.
or so. Now I turn this way down because this is very hot and it will burn. And a trick, secret trick, little dab of olive oil, and your butter won't burn as easy.
Yep, because that's the thing, you know, one of the big mistakes people make is they put butter in a skillet and you get the skillet blazing hot and the butter burns and it makes everything nasty. And remember, as Julia says, never crowd your mushrooms or they won't sear, right?
Exactly.
So you want them to be...
They steam otherwise.
Yeah, for some reason they steam. Now they're probably going to shrink up a little bit.
Oh, yes, a lot.
Ooh, and now right about at this time in the process, you should have your potatoes still going over there.
Usually at least 20 minutes. I check them at 20 with a knife, piercing them with a knife.
Yep, and see how soft they are.
Mm-hmm.
And now normally, my lovely wife Tammy here, you know, of course you've got that, you know, super bad, you know, KitchenAid mixer we got you, but normally you would probably do that to make your potatoes, but not everybody's going to have one of those, so we're going to do it the old-fashioned way with a, you know, dollar store potato masher. Believe me, they'll be just as good.
This is probably from about 1970.
Yeah, really.
Vintage.
Yeah, yeah. It's like we got all our own vintage stuff, don't we?
Yep.
So, and that's where we're at. Our meat's sitting over there waiting for us to finish on the mushrooms. Now, once the mushrooms finish, you know, you're going to have all this nice goodness of drippings in the pan, and you know, that's what we're going to sear. We'll sear the steak in it, and then we'll run the drippings off, enough drippings to put in the gravy and the potatoes later. So. Alright, so after they've been searing there for just a little, what, not even a minute, then you start flipping them over, so they'll sear a little bit on the other side. You know, you don't necessarily need to cook the crap out of them, you just want to get a little sear on them. And then, right, remember their space so that they won't steam instead of sear. So that's the important little bit of sciencey stuff there. Now you'll notice by this point we're about, maybe 10 minutes in. Our water's starting to come to a boil, so you want to be careful. First of all, you know, you fill your pot only 3/4 full, or a little over half full, and then put your potatoes in. Because once it gets boiling, all that starch is going to come up and it's going to boil over, so you don't want that. So that's why you start with about a 3/4, somewhere a little less than 3/4 filled pan, and then that way, as soon as it starts to boil like that, then we'll cut the heat back to a simmer, or a medium simmer. All right, now, a lot of folks know about, you know, putting blue cheese on a filet mignon. And now, this is just an interesting, novel take on it.
We came up with this. I love the whole sweet and savory thing, and anybody that's ever had that, your meat, or it's like a salad with dried cranberries, you know what I'm talking about. And it's just so delicious.
It's got that, you know, not everybody's a big fan of blue cheese. I know
and
it's a stinky cheese,
and the Stilton is in the blue cheese family, but it's actually
not as nasty.
Near as strong.
Yeah, I mean it's a delicious cheese, and the cranberry, the tang of the cranberry really offsets it nicely. So now what we're going to do is we're going to just cut a bit off here to crumble for our to put on top of our.
That's certainly enough, I believe.
Steak, yeah. Yeah, we got to have the chef's cut right there.
We love it, and we got turned on to it Christmas from our neighbors.
Yeah, because I'm not a really big fan of blue cheese.
But she gave us a small wedge of it, and it was imported from England, and I just, oh my goodness, it was
it's
so
good. Now Stilton cheese comes from England, and it's typically like a holiday cheese. You know, they use it for, you know, during the holidays.
Sheep's milk or goat's milk, I'm not sure.
I think it was originally done with like sheep's milk or something.
But it's delicious.
Oh, it's so good. And we're just going to crumble it up and make little bits, and just, you know, just like that. Just go like that with your knife and just make little crumbles and bits. And then you get a big chunk like that, and just crumble it up like that, and all we're going to do is we're going to just drizzle it over the meat before we put it in the oven. And all these flavors are going to combine, you know, to just make a fantastic tasting dish. So, and remember, of course, you always wash your hands in between going from meat to anything else. So, Honey, why don't you bring those mushrooms over here and put them in frame there and show her what they came out looking like. Man, they are good.
They are delicious.
Okay, and again, this is up for debate, but we wrap our bacon around the filet before we sear. And now
One thing, it's going to be blazing hot.
Yeah, it's going to be blazing hot afterwards. So then you take your little picks, your toothpicks. Now ours, the reason why we used 4 slices of bacon is it takes 2 of them to get around that big old honking filet. So, and you're going to take that, get it all wrapped around there real nice, and then you hold it in place with a...
We didn't have any toothpicks, so we're using half skewered.
Wood skewers.
But it works, whatever works. Just remember to take it out before you eat.
Yep.
You don't want to choke anybody.
Yep. Just poke that in there to hold the bacon in place. Now on the skillet, I've drained out all the excess. You see it smoking, so that's good. You lay it in there.
That's what you want to hear.
And you want to hear that sizzle.
That's not a hair, folks. That's a piece of...
That's a piece of skewer, yeah. And then, what is it, about 3 to 5 minutes per side? Or 3 to 4 minutes?
Actually, not even that, because it's going to go into the oven for about...
Yeah. When you sear it like that with a really high heat, then what that does is that seals in the outside of the meat to keep it juicy. And of course, too, you know, when you pull your... before you put your rub on your meat, you want to make sure it's good and dry, just like your mushrooms. So that's going to make for a nice. So we'll let that sear a little bit for a couple minutes, whatever, and then we'll flip them over. Now about this time, we're going to go ahead and check our potatoes, see how they're doing.
What I normally do is just take it up. If you can stick a knife in, they're almost ready because they're very soft, but it should
fall off when you pull it up out
totally fall off when you pull it up.
Pull it up out of the thing.
So we're just about there, maybe a couple more minutes. So what has that been? A minute or?
About a minute and a half. You see what that looks like? It's got a nice sear on it.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful. And in about another minute or two, we'll check our potatoes. And right now is probably about a good time to get your chocolate and stuff out that we're going to use for the strawberries, I would say. Now,
so what we have here.
Now what we have here is we got our chocolate chips. I'd say that's what, about maybe half a bag of chips.
Yeah, that's
at least a bag, maybe.
At least a cup.
That's enough to dip your strawberries in. Now here's a good cheating way to do it. You stick it in the microwave.
Take your, also you want to take your power down on it.
Yeah, what, about half power?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then...
I put a minute on it. We're going to pull it out every 30 seconds and stir it. This way you don't burn your chocolate.
Yep, don't want to burn the chocolate. Alright, so now we got our good sear on there. Get you a hot pad, because that cast iron skillet is hot. And then we throw it in the oven for about, say, what, 20 minutes?
Oh, it's not even 20.
Because you don't want to overcook the meat, because that won't be tender.
You'll have to go online and do research of whether you want medium,
yeah,
well done. I would never well done a steak, but
yeah, I'd say
medium rare is usually 3 minutes on the side.
Yeah, we're going to check it at about 15. So, okay, so now I think our potatoes are about done because you see, they won't. You can't stick them and pull them up out of the pan. Yeah, there's one of them that still could use a little bit, but they're for the most part done. Okay, now you want to take, once you've strained your potatoes in a strainer and poured them back in the pot, set your little hot pad down on there, and then we'll take the last of our stick of butter here and cut it up, throw it down in there. You never have really too much butter, I don't think, when it comes to mashed potatoes. And maybe about 2 tablespoons of kosher salt. I'm just going to throw a little bit of it in there like that. That's about good. And then use our vintage potato masher and you just go to town. Now, like I said, we leave the skin on ours. We kind of like that, but if you don't, that's okay. Just peel your potatoes before you start. And you know, we're you know, diverse and friendly here. No, we ain't gonna be hating on nobody that likes skin on their potatoes. And then use you some whole milk. Throw in there once you get it mashed up real nice and good. Now there's some people that don't like chunks in their potatoes and all. All that's determined by is how long you mash it. And then we'll take a nice big spoon or fork or something. That's how we'll cut in the milk. There, I'd say just throw a little bit of milk in there, just a dash, and then let's see, what do I want to use? Let me have that metal slotted spoon there. That'll work. And you just kind of gently, it's got to be gentle at first because the milk will slosh out if you're not careful. And then once we get our potatoes right, and don't worry, because you know we got a little ways to go yet before the meat's going to be ready. If these things thicken up a little bit on you and they get too thick, just throw a little more milk in there. And
a good way to hold mashed potatoes is over a pot of simmering water with a lid on it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll hold them up to about 30 minutes like that.
Yeah, yeah, because this, you know, sometimes it's hard to time everything to get everything to come together. But if you don't have that luxury of setting up a steamer, you can just take and just set them aside. And you don't want to put them over a flame, but just set them aside. And if they start to thicken up a little too much for you, just throw a little bit of water in there. Now, remember that strip of bacon that we cooked up real hard and crispy? You just crumble it up and mix it in there. And I know my son and my sons, you know, they'll be like, what, one strip of bacon? It's probably about a pack of bacon, you know, is probably what he would like. So, now while I'm doing this, of course our steaks or our fillets are simmering in the oven, and Tammy's working on those strawberries. I'm gonna wash my hands. All you got to do with that, when you melt, it's so simple. When you melt those chocolate chips, you know, some people like to maybe throw a little whole milk in there, or
You have to be careful with the
you have to be
seasoning.
careful, because if you go with like heavy cream or half and half, then the chocolate may seize up on you. An example of that is kind of like the dipped cones, you know, where the chocolate hardens up. So you want to, we just take the regular bag chips and melt them in the microwave a minute at a time on half power, and take them out, stir them up each time until you get a nice soft chocolatey goodness. And I like my potatoes a little on the thick side, but I think this is a little too thick, so I'm just going to put a tiny bit more milk in here to thin that up. And you always really want to use whole milk in mashed potatoes. I may imagine you can use skim if it's your preference, but you know, all these little bitty things combine together to make that flavor. And now she's melted the chocolate in the microwave a minute at a time on half power, and you always want to keep an eye on it because microwaves are different. And then you just dunk the strawberry in there halfway and lay it on your plate. Now we spent a little extra money and got the ones with the stem still on them, and you know, you wash them carefully and dry them first, and
Put them in the fridge and they'll harden up real nice.
And then you can we're going to stick these in the fridge while the meat's cooking the rest of the way, and by the time we're ready for dessert, they'll be hardened up nice, and oh, they'll be good.
Okay. So what we have here, I took those out. Wow, I have chocolate all over me. Part of being a chef. I love these instant read thermometers.
Yep.
They're so wonderful. And you want to, you know, put it in at the thickest part of your steak. Now, I took it out when it was registering. It's set, so it's coming up. You know, you have carryover heat. And we're at 140, which is perfectly fine for medium rare. Because meat's well done at 160.
Okay, now, what we're going to do is we're going to make our nice, cheap and easy gravy. And just use your regular old brown gravy packets from the store. And like I said, the reason we're doing that here is because the filet is not going to make enough juice or drippings to make a gravy. So, your standard pack of brown gravy mix, you're going to need 1 cup. And I use cold water. Okay, that's the trick to not having lumpy gravy. Okay, or one of the tricks. And then you start whisking in, or you can use a spoon. You don't have to have a high dollar whisk or anything like that. And you pour your powder in there, and you mix it up so you clean down the sides and everything. Okay, so you can start out with a fairly high heat if you want to get going. And the trick to not having lumpy gravy is to keep it moving. Alright, now you're going to see it start bubbling, getting bubbles on the top.
You can tell that it's getting thick.
And you can tell it's going to start thickening up any second now. You tell me when you feel it thickening up there, honey.
We're there.
Alright, when you pull it off the heat, shut your heat off, and now's a good time to spoon in your mushrooms. This is where we're going to make our gravy extra special. Throw the mushrooms in there, and the other little bit. So you don't want to dump them in there because, see, you got a lot of juice and stuff in there in the bottom of the bowl, where still you have moisture coming out of those mushrooms. So
There, let me get that for you.
yeah, let me get that. And then our drippings that we poured out of the skillet before we put our steaks in the oven will go in there too. And that's going to, and I promise you, okay, no one will be able to tell that that wasn't homemade gravy made from beef drippings. So, all right, and there it is in all its glory. Now, if you like green beans or something like that, you know, you can add that too. You know, we didn't do it because we wanted to keep it short and sweet, and the focus of the meal is going to be, of course, the filet mignon. You just drizzle your cheese over the top that you crumbled up earlier, blob down your mashed potatoes, make a little crater in the middle, and pour your gravy on there. And then we have our lovely chocolate covered strawberries out of the fridge. They're ready to go. And you can make this, you know, you can make this meal in about 45 minutes. You know, if you're just doing it from start to finish.
Okay, and here we have our finished product. Beautiful steak and potatoes, worthy of any five-star restaurant, and you'll make, I guarantee, any person that you love very, very happy when you present this to them.
Yep.
And
Now,
beautiful chocolate covered strawberries.
Yep. And now, since it's Valentine's Day, we're going to pop the champagne and enjoy ourselves a well-earned Valentine's Day meal.
Steak dinner.
Yes, indeed. And we want to thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Feel free to post comments down on the, down below. All comments are welcome. If you like it, hate it, hey, we want to hear from you. And we can also reach us at the email address for my page, which is MacGyversWorkshop.com. thank you again. We
Thank
hope
you.
you enjoyed our little video, and y'all have a great day.
See ya.